Executive Suite with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nisi.
Few businesses are tougher to get off the ground than restaurants. Everyone loves a good meal, but providing one profitably isn't easy. One company that's cracked the code, Siena Restaurant Group, which opened its first eatery on Federal Hill in 2005. Now, 8 years later, Siena is preparing to open a third location in Smithfield and adding 50 new jobs. So what's the family-owned firm's recipe for growth? This week on Executive Suite, Siena co-owners Anthony and Chris Tarro. Plus, Steve Jobs famously started Apple Computer in his garage. The Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce is hoping to tap into the same entrepreneurial spirit with an event this week and a new website showcasing Rhode Island's private sector success stories. On the second half of Executive Suite, from the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce, Laurie White and John Duffy. Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi. Chris, Anthony, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Ted.
Now, just before we started, I asked who's the older brother, and you were a little aggrieved.
I was taken back. He's 8 years older than me.
8 years old.
You're killing me over here. I'll hear about this for the next year.
Thought you were identical twins. Who knew? Who knew? All right, so that actually, my first question is, what's it like to be in business with your brother?
I tell everybody we have the same kind of business dealings as any other partnership. It can become a little bit more passionate when we disagree, but that's because we're Italian Americans. But the great thing about being a brother and having him as my partner is, unlike regular business partnerships, we're both going to be having Captain Crunch at the breakfast table the next morning. That's just part of being, family, and it helps us to resolve problems and not, sit on them too long.
Now let me ask, as a family, I believe you two grew up in Warwick. Was your family
Yes.
in Warwick? And was food always a part of the Tarro family? Is this something you grew up with?
Yeah, I mean, we're a large Italian family. We're one of 8 kids. And going back to what you asked earlier, I could not be partners with the majority of them. We would kill each other after week 1 or 2. I think the most rewarding thing is building this business together with my brother. Sometimes that's the hardest thing. I think a little bit it hurts we were probably best of friends before the business, and now we still love each other to death, but sometimes when we clock out, we can't wait to get away from each other. We'd be lying to tell you anything different. So I think that intimate friendship we've not lost, but is the downside of being business. Yeah. You got to break apart a little bit when it does. Food has always been a part of us growing up. With all respect to Anthony, the best cook in my family is my mother.
Yeah.
And she can't cook for one person. She has to cook for 12 people. No matter if she tries to cook for one, she messes up the recipe. She's a taste it at it, but we always, dinner table parties, family dinners were always part of what we grew up doing. So I think that's how we became passionate about food. Plus, well, we like it. So.
Hey, I'm half Italian American myself, so I understand that. Anthony, you're, I believe, the division of labor here. You're more on the business side, Chris, and Anthony, you're the chef. You cooked for President Bush once, I believe.
I did. I was the executive chef for the Jan Companies at Quidnessa Country Club, and I was the chef de cuisine for his only visit to Rhode Island, and Quidnessa was the host facility.
What'd you make him?
I made him a fruit plate.
Really?
Yes.
Do you like it?
I don't know. I wasn't allowed to watch him eat.
I guess that
I did get to meet him. He was a wonderful man.
Yeah.
But there's certain security issues.
Secret Service not going to let you in there. So let's talk about Siena. The first Siena restaurant opened in, as I said, in 2005 on Federal Hill. And a lot of people, their first thought is, how is there room for another, why would you start another Italian restaurant on Federal Hill? So much competition up there, so many restaurants already and some good ones. What made you guys decide that, hey, there was an opening here, we can open a new one?
Well, to be honest with you, I think going back then, there was actually a decline in restaurants, or the start of a decline in restaurants on Federal Hill. When we were approached about the property that was available, it was dead center. It was the heart of Federal Hill. In between De Pasquale Square and Dean Street. I just felt in my heart that what we could do there, from a culinary standpoint, from a service standpoint, was going to be unique. You were going to have passion that was going to be delivered through Tuscan Italian food and other regional Italian food products and styles of cuisine. So I don't think it was really fearful, but a lot of people did say, "Are you crazy? what are you doing? But I really felt that we could bring to the table something that was unique. And my father always taught me as a business person, if you do something that nobody else does, people will come and visit you. If you can maintain that, you'll be successful for the rest of your life. And so I think that's what we did. We came with something that was, yes, Italian, but slightly different in the Tuscan approach.
Say a little more about Tuscan. What does it mean that it's Tuscan?
Well, Tuscany, I think we're deriving from a central region of Italy where we're using indigenous food products, indigenous preparations, and certainly more of a peasant-style approach to the food. I tell people all the time, I cook generational Italian food. I make my father's mother was from Syracuse, Sicily. I cook in her style. We still make a dish at the restaurant called Pollo della Nonna. And my father always comes in and says, I don't want my grandmother's chicken, I want my mother's chicken. So, you know, that's the way we live our food in the restaurant.
So it comes right at you. And Chris, on the business side, you got in just before the first restaurant opened, so you've been here the whole time.
Yeah. I was a corporate America guy, and you know, your brother buys a building. He bought the building on Atwells Ave, and I'm like, make sure there's a case of beer in the cooler, and I'd come paint bathrooms, and all the siblings did it. And then I became like an investor, and over time, we would sit there and at the end of a long day have a couple beers, and he's like, come do it. I'm still paying off my grad still loans today, and I'm like, no way. And a funny conversation is when I finally did it, my mother called me up and goes, and my mother has a choice words at times, so it's on TV.
FCC license.
What are you, crazy? There were some other things in there. I get it, your brother is a chef, he has to do it, but what the hell are you thinking? And so we came and did it, but I always knew I wanted to own my own restaurant, my own businesses, and be in business for myself after being in corporate America for so long. So the opportunity to do restaurants was fine. I look at it as a little bit of food, widgets, the proverbial, whatever you're selling, it's still marketing. We're marketing a product, and our product is Siena.
All right, we have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Siena's third restaurant, getting ready to open that, and some of the healthcare laws ramifications on the industry. Stick with us. You're watching Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, and I'm joined by Anthony and Chris Tarro. They're the co-owners of Siena Restaurant Group, which is in Providence, East Greenwich, and soon Smithfield. When are you planning to open the new Smithfield restaurant?
We're keeping our fingers crossed. Early June.
Early June. Where exactly in Smithfield?
It's 400 Putnam Pike, right directly across from Apple Valley Mall.
Oh, okay.
In the same plaza, there is a brand new Starbucks.
My colleague's always up there when there's a snowstorm. We send them to do their live shots.
Right in the plaza.
Stop in for a meatball.
They go to the CVS Plaza right there. I always see it. I live up in Greenville, so I know exactly where it is.
Every couple of months there. So before we get to the new restaurant, you opened the East Greenwich restaurant in 2007. Seems like a tough time to be getting a new business off the ground with the crash that came after, but it worked out.
Yeah, you know, luckily we were in our Providence location for a couple of years, and we decided for economic reasons and for, you know, job development and growth, we always want to do multiple locations. And the Benny's Plaza in EG had a restaurant that was looking to sell. We went there. I think we were lucky that we were getting established, had a good reputation, and it wasn't a huge capital investment because it was already an existing restaurant with a great landlord, the Benny's people, affordable lease, that we weren't too far over our skis when things kind of got a little bit hairy. And heck, we thought, you know, one day you wake up and maybe nobody will go out for dinner anymore.
Right.
When the Dow went down to 6,000. So, you know, I think the nice thing with our business is, you know, me and my brother can do everything in the restaurant, and need be, he'll cook and I'll bartend, and we'll figure out a way to we'll get by one way or another.
But I believe you actually have a lot of employees. I think more than 80 full-time and part-time all told?
Yeah, we have about 80 employees right now. I guess somewhere in the 50, 55 range of full-time employees right now. And of course, that will expand greatly with the addition of the Smithfield location.
Yeah, tell me about, where was the decision? Why Smithfield? Why did you decide a third restaurant
we
there?
came to Smithfield because honestly, we were actually looking in the suburban Boston area. And we ended up partnering with a company called Linear Retail. And they didn't have something available for us in Massachusetts, but they said, hey, guess what? We have this location. And you know, we looked at the demographics, we looked at the traffic count, we negotiated what we believed to be a pretty good lease, and came to terms, and so we put it all together and feel very strongly that it's enough of a distance away from our other restaurant in Providence. and we can draw from a Massachusetts, Blackstone Valley crowd from that as well. So,
and you had a job fair a few weeks ago, because I think you have about 50 positions you're going to be filling full and part-time there. How was the turnout?
Oh, it's fantastic. We had at least 200, if not more. Servers, bus help, hostesses, cooks, dishwashers all come out. It was a great event.
And do you have a different plan for this? Is it going to be similar to the Providence one, to the EG one? Are they all sort of sharing the same philosophy?
I think it's probably going to have a little bit more of the suburban feel, a little bit more like our East Greenwich restaurant. I'm proud of the fact that when we first bought Providence, we didn't have much money left in our bank accounts, so you could only put so much into it. As we grew into East Greenwich, things got a little bit better appointed, and now, as we built Smithfield, we came in with strong cash flow. We're able to build a suitable restaurant and not really have to cut corners about it.
Chris, I got to ask you, we're hearing a lot lately about the health care law, the health reform President Obama got passed, and restaurants are a little concerned, I believe, because if you get over 50 employees, you have to provide it. Have you looked at that at all? Could it impact Siena?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time with it, and it's something that concerns us greatly. We probably the proudest thing we do is the amount of employees we have, and we give a lot of people jobs. We'd love to give everybody on our payroll health care, 401k, all these. We can't afford it. Restaurants are lots of employees, low margins. And I've talked to the people from Greg's and Cello's and Chow Fun Group. We're all scrambling to understand how we're going to do it, because the margin's just not there. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, if you have 100 full-time employees, and you said, conservatively, it's $3,000 a year for health insurance, that's $300,000. It's not there. So we're looking to see what we can do. I mean, we'll get through it. It is what it is. We got through the bottom of the stock market. There are other things going on, but it scares us a lot. And as a business person in this community, where it should scare other people is maybe the Siena of tomorrow doesn't open a second restaurant, doesn't open a third, because they say, well, if I add more full-time employees, I've got to now pay health care for everybody. We do offer it to our managers. It's just,
there's that cliff from 49 to 50 on the employee.
Yeah. So would a restaurant go that far? We want to be the best employer out there. We want to do the things of choice, but on a busy Saturday night in a 100-seat restaurant, we have 25 employees. It's really not there. So you can see, the number 4 employer in the country, when you think of Walmart, all this, is a restaurant chain called Darden. They're struggling with it. They're going to all part-time employees at restaurants. We don't want to do that. We have no plans to do that. We're going to have to tackle it how we do. But the restaurant industry, and I'm assuming a few others that are lots of employees, low margins, the law didn't take into consideration what it would do to these, because clearly what they don't want us doing is inflating our prices to cover it, and 2, laying off people to cover it, 3, knocking people to part-time. But those are really my 3 options, because we don't make the money to, $300,000. I mean, that's
the impact it has on us, and I think part of our success is the price point at which we deliver the food and service, the total package. Once you start adding incremental dollars to each entree or appetizer or drink, it may not catch up with you immediately, but those small things in the state of Rhode Island, everybody notices it.
Yeah, there's price elasticity to food, just like there is to everything else. I mean.
All right, that's all the time we have, gentlemen, but certainly something we'll be watching in the restaurant industry. Thank you both for being with me. Don't go away, because when we come back, we'll be talking about why the Greater Providence Chamber wants you to go to the Garage. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi. I'm joined now by Laurie White. She's president of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce, and John Duffy, who does her bidding as the chairman of the Greater Providence Chamber. Absolutely right, correct? So, Laurie, let's just start with the basics. What is the Garage?
It's the place where growth companies are going to come together and to share their stories and talk about their aha moments. So it's a way to bring companies that are in a growing situation to inspire others to get together and to share success stories, and also to build capacity. We've chosen 3 or 4 target industries to begin, so we'll build capacity in medical devices and health and wellness and consumer products. and use that as our first launching pad, and hope to repeat the garage again in
And
the
concretely,
fall.
are we talking about there's an event on Tuesday? Is that the garage? There's also a website. Is there a garage somewhere?
The garage is metaphorical, but it also will have a physical presence. So we've unveiled this concept where, if you think about some of the large cap companies that are so very famous in this world that literally and figuratively started in a garage, thinking about Google and Microsoft and Dell out in the Silicon Valley, the idea that any company can really grow and become a growth company at some point is supposed to be aspirational and inspirational. So we've created an event at the Convention Center on Tuesday that will bring together a carefully curated set of companies that will talk about what they've done to get into a growth mode and to change the course of their business, and in some instances over the course of many, many decades, gone on to a new path, developed some new models, and are really rocking it at this point.
And I'm going to ask you in a second about the why you decided this was needed, but John, give me a sense of who's going to be there. What are we going to hear from them at this event?
Well, what you're going to hear is a wide variety of businesses, from startups like a G-Form, who've been around for a couple of years, to a Davol, Bard, who've been around since 1874. And the one thing they have in common is they're in growth mode. They have growth strategies, and because of that, they have growth problems. You know, growth isn't always an easy thing to tackle. So we want to put these companies on display and let people learn from them, let people learn what's going on. One of the things we learned is it's easier to grow existing companies than go find companies to bring here, right?
That's occasionally gone badly.
We're not always successful on learning new companies here. Sometimes we are.
We get them to come, they just don't stay in business. Yeah.
But here we are. We have some wonderful stories. We have 50 companies that we're going to highlight with some unbelievable great stories that you don't know about. You should be there to figure out who should be on this set in the coming weeks, because there's really some phenomenal stories that we're excited to share.
Reminds me of that idea of economic gardening you read about, where you look at what you already have growing and you try to, how can we plant the seeds for that? Laurie, what's the why here? There's been a lot going on in the private sector in Rhode Island the last year. You had the Make It Happen event that my sponsor, the Rhode Island Foundation, did, full disclosure, but and other, I know a lot of conversations go on. Where did this come out of?
Well, the concept was, if you take a look at what the best practice literature says and how to grow state economies, and we attacked this from a very intellectual point of view. And what you do is you focus on growth companies because they are the ones that are in the best position to add revenue, to add jobs and employment, and to really add tax revenue. So the idea is you put a fence around them, if you will, and focus on them, nurture them, embrace them, and then cross-pollinate them with other business leaders, other business people, and crazy things can happen. You can develop new alliances, new partnerships, new product lines perhaps, with people coming together that aren't traditionally in the same room, and that's how you do we're calling them random collisions. So we're having specific places in the garage where people can sort of go offline and hopefully develop opportunities to do business with one another and see what happens. And in this world of putting together large-scale events, it's really the more unstructured events that's in vogue today, because people don't necessarily want to go up and down aisles and to be formally cattled into one direction. They want to have spontaneous moments, and they want to interact with people that are unexpected. So we are thinking that the garage will create a lot of unexpected moments.
And I know CVS Chief Larry Merlo is going to be talking. You're moderating a panel. What else? What other stories do you hope people will hear, and have you heard that get you excited about this?
I want people to look at a company and see themselves in it, whether it's a small company or we have a company called Optum, which is a division of United Health. They're a $29 billion company growing at 35% a year. All right, that's some very amazing growth. But then we have Adhesia, Nave and Salem's company, which is making nutritional products for third world countries. I mean, we're all over the place here, and that's what we want to celebrate. You know, we concentrate on 4 distinct categories, but even within those categories, there's a wide variety of type of companies, and we want somebody to go there to see themselves, you know, and be able to take something away that this company did, their aha moment. How can I translate that to my business?
Now, all three of us see each other a lot at the State House, and by my count, we have something like more than 40 bills have been introduced in the last couple months by House and Senate leaders on economic development. Ran the spectrum from a new child care thing in TDI to looking at biweekly pay, all these different things. I'd just like to get the sense from you two when you're talking to business leaders and looking at those bills. Do you see good stuff in there? Are there things you're concerned about? What are you thinking so far, Laurie, on all this legislative activity?
Yeah, well, what we're seeing is shining the spotlight on economic development, on job creation, and on some of the systemic problems that we see in Rhode Island in terms of not necessarily being overly receptive and friendly to business. So if we can figure out how to expedite the whole permitting system, which is, it sounds like, you know, a very obtuse subject, but there's nothing more important than if you have a dream, if you have a project, if you have a building, if you have a license that you need to get, and if you can't get it and your capital is on the sidelines, you're not hiring people, you're not in business, how to accelerate that in a way that makes that really possible. There are a couple of other bills, the biweekly payment of wages. Rhode Island is an outlier in that, and there's no excuse.
I think we're the only state
in 2013
that doesn't allow biweekly paychecks.
Yeah, for hourly employees.
For hourly.
And it's a situation that's really untenable, and there's no reason for it in 2013 in terms of what do we need to do to block, you know, to tear down those walls in terms of what it takes to frustrate business people. So there's a lot of legislation up there that will take a look at the Economic Development Corporation and how to make it, in fact, a more responsive organization, and one that kind of mirrors what happens in other places across the country where there's a huge focus on business development, on embracing business, working with the companies that you have, but also backfilling and recruiting and bringing in more. So we're very pleased with the direction that we've seen from both the House and the Senate. And
John, your thoughts on that?
Well, the fact that the Senate President put forth the Moving the Needle report and did the work to get that done, and then Speaker Fox put together a 17-point package on economic development shows they're engaged. They understand the urgency around the economy, and I don't think we've ever seen that type of action. It's been a long time. It has been a sea change. It's very exciting to see.
Do you have a top priority? We only have about 30 seconds left. The number one thing you really want to see is done by July?
Well, we would like to see a really coherent model for the Rhode Island Economic Development Corporation
EDC,
going forward. And there are a lot of ideas that are out there now. The House and the Senate versions are a little bit different. The governor has a little bit of a different view, but there's certainly room for, you know, at the end of the legislative session to be able to say, this is the new EDC structure that we can all get behind. But not just structure, it's more than just structure, it's mindset.
Mm-hmm. And you don't doubt change is needed at the EDC?
Absolutely.
You agree on that, John?
Yes. The other thing is both the Senate and the House both have bills requiring a governor put forward an economic development plan every 4 years.
You think that's a good idea?
I think it's a brilliant idea. We don't have one.
And I think
you see the Massachusetts makes it a requirement. I think it's a very, very good piece of legislation.
When that plan is done, you will hear all about it here on Executive Suite. I'll have you two back. John and Laurie, thanks for coming in. The Garage, it's coming up on Tuesday. You can also Google it. I think thegarageri.com. We'll see you next week on Executive Suite.